It is night. An old temple stands in silence. Oil lamps flicker against stone walls. Dust moves slowly through the air. And in one dark corner, on a wooden stand, lies an ancient manuscript. Its leaves are cracked, its edges are broken, the ink has almost disappeared. But on the first page, one word can still be seen: Aryavarta. This was not just a name, it was a doorway into a world that lived long before India became the India we know today. A world where rivers were not only rivers, but mothers, goddesses, borders, and memories. A world where kings did not become great only by holding a sword, but by carrying the burden of Dharma. A world where sages sat in forests and preserved sounds so ancient that thousands of years later, people still repeat them with reverence. And behind every story from that world, one question quietly waits: who were we before we became what we are now? This story begins with that question, because if we understand Aryavarta, we do not only understand an old word, we begin to understand how the soul of Bharat was formed. But be careful, this story does not move in a straight line. It is hidden in soil, it is hidden in chants, it is hidden in battlefields, and it is hidden inside stories that some call history, some call epic memory, and some call sacred tradition. So let us remove the dust of time. Let us enter a world where there was no modern border, no passport, no national map with the word India written across it, and yet people still knew that they belonged to something, not a modern nation, something older, something deeper, a way of life, a memory, a direction. Aryavarta. The first thing we must understand is this: Aryavarta was not a modern political country. It was not a state drawn by officials on a map. It was not a fixed border guarded by armies. It was a cultural world, a world shaped by language, memory, ritual, conduct, learning, and dharma. And here, dharma did not mean religion in the narrow modern sense. Dharma was order, dharma was duty, dharma was the invisible law that made a king, a teacher, a son, and a warrior. If dharma collapsed, it was not only one person who fell, the entire kingdom trembled. That is the key to Aryavarta. It was not only a land, it was a way of living. But beneath that world lies another layer, an older layer, a quieter layer, the layer of buried cities: Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, Rakhigarhi. These names do not speak in the language of hymns. No epic voice rises clearly from their streets, but the bricks speak, the straight roads speak, the drainage systems speak, the wells, reservoirs, seals, beats, and walls speak. They tell us that civilization on this land was not built only by story and prayer. It was also built by skill, planning, trade, water, and discipline. And this is where the mystery becomes deeper. Was there a bridge between those ancient cities and the later Vedic memory? Did the people of older river worlds change, mix, move, and become part of new cultures? Did the old world truly disappear, or did some part of it survive inside later traditions, words, rituals, and stories? Scholars still debate these questions, but one thing is certain: the ancient past of India is not a single clean line. It is made of layers, and beneath every layer, there is another story waiting. Now imagine a morning thousands of years ago: wide plains, dense forests, the sound of horses, smoke rising from a sacred fire, sages sitting in concentration, voices repeating chants with perfect care. These chants are not being read from a printed book, they are being remembered from teacher to student, from voice to voice, from one generation to the next. This was the Vedic world, and the heartbeat of that world was water, the land of the seven rivers, Sapta Sindhu. In that world, water was not just a resource, water was life. Water was a path, water was a boundary, water was memory. And among these rivers, one name returns again and again: Saraswati. Today, Saraswati is remembered as the goddess of knowledge, music, learning, and speech. But in ancient memory, Saraswati was also a river praised in sacred hymns, a river remembered as powerful, holy, and life giving. Then the mystery begins. Where did that river go? Did it truly flow as a mighty river? Did it dry up? Did its course change? Did it survive only in memory? Some mysteries in history do not give easy answers. They give us deeper questions. Saraswati is one of them. And perhaps that is why the search for Saraswati is not only a search for geography, it is a search for memory. When a river dries, fields change, settlements move, trade routes shift, stories change, gods and goddesses take new forms. Sometimes the center of an entire civilization moves with the water. That is why the question of Saraswati is so powerful. It does not only ask where the river was, it asks how a civilization remembers what it has lost. Does it turn the lost thing into a goddess? Does it turn it into a story? Or does it place it so deeply inside itself that even after thousands of years, the name still makes the mind fall silent? Whether Saraswati is searched in geography or in memory, one thing is clear. The beginning of Aryavarta cannot be understood without rivers. Where there was water, there was settlement. Where there was settlement, there was fire. Where there was fire, there were chants. And where there were chants, the voice of civilization began to rise. Time moves forward. The groups that lived around rivers begin to grow. Clans become peoples, peoples become janapadas, janapadas become kingdoms. This is not only a world of cattle, horses, and fire rituals. Now there are capitals, assemblies, royal courts, politics, conflicts over power, Kuru, Panchala, Kosala, Videha, Magadha. These names are not a dry list from an old textbook. They were early centers of power, learning, and memory. In the lands of Kuru and Panchala, Vedic culture became stronger. In Kosala, the memory of Ayodhya shines. In Videha, we see the image of King Janaka, a ruler remembered not only for power but for wisdom. In Magadha, the future of empire begins to gather strength. But these capitals were not alive only because of kings. They were alive because of ordinary people. The potter who shaped clay, the chariot maker who tested a wheel before battle, the healer who searched the forest for herbs, the student in a gurukul trying to remember his first chant, the mother who taught her son to become a human being before becoming a warrior. History remembers the names of kings, but civilization is built by countless people whose names are never written down. The story of Aryavarta is the same. Some names became immortal, most disappeared like smoke in time, but without them, this world could never have existed. And now, the question becomes larger. Who is a king? Is he the one who conquers or the one who upholds Dharma? Here the story turns toward the Ramayana, Ayodhya, a sacred city on the banks of the Sarayu. In Indian memory, Ayodhya is not only a city, it became a symbol of Maryada, of restraint, of moral order, of the burden of righteous conduct. King Dasharatha, Queen Kaushalya, Prince Rama, exile, a promise, and a throne left behind because a word had been given. Think about it. A prince stands before power. A kingdom is waiting for him. The future is his. And yet, he walks toward the forest. Why? Because for Rama, Dharma was greater than the throne. That is the soul of the Ramayana. It is not only a story of war, it is a story of choice. The kind of choice that does not measure a person from the outside, but from within. Rama's exile becomes a journey across the memory of Bharat, from Ayodhya to Chitrakoot, from Chitrakoot to the deep forests, to Panchavati, to Kishkindha, to the edge of the sea, and then toward Lanka. This journey is geography, it is emotion, and it is also a cultural thread that tied many lands into one shared story. But the Ramayana is not only bright, it is filled with pain, renunciation, uncertainty, the abduction of Saita. A war fought not merely for a kingdom, but for dignity, justice, and Maryada. And even at the end, the questions do not disappear. Does a person who follows Dharma escape suffering? The Ramayana says no. Dharma does not erase suffering. Dharma gives suffering meaning. And that is why the Ramayana does not remain only an ancient tale. In every age, someone must leave their Ayodhya. Someone must give up comfort for a promise. Someone must walk into a forest no one else understands. Someone must choose truth when power is easier. That is why Rama goes into the forest, but the story returns inside us. Because every life has a forest, a path where no one applauds, a path where only the decision walks beside you, and that is where the real form of a human being is revealed. This is why Aryavarta was not only the land of conquerors, it was also the land of those who made sacrifice. Now the story becomes darker. After the Ramayana comes the Mahabharata. If the Ramayana asks what the ideal is, the Mahabharata asks what remains when the ideal breaks. Hastinapur, a royal family, a blind king, 100 sons, 5 brothers, a game of dice, a humiliation in exile, a promises, and at the end, a Kurukshetra. The power of the Mahabharata lies in this. No one is simple. Bhishma is great, but he remains silent when silence becomes dangerous. Drona is a teacher, but he stands on a battlefield against his own students. Karna is generous, brilliant, and wounded by humiliation, yet bound to the side of Dharma. Yudhishthira is called Dharma Raja, yet he gambles away everything. Arjuna is a warrior, yet he collapses before the war begins. And Krishna enters this blurred world as direction. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna stands in his chariot. In front of him are his own people, teachers, elders, friends, brothers. His hands tremble, his bow falls, and he asks the question that turns the Mahabharata from a war story into an eternal mirror. Whom am I supposed to fight? My own people? For a kingdom? This is the moment where the story rises above battle. It becomes the war inside the human heart, duty and emotion, action and attachment, power and truth, victory and destruction. Krishna does not simply push Arjuna toward violence, he gives him a way of seeing. He shows him that Dharma is not always comfortable. Sometimes the right path does not pass through flowers, sometimes it passes through fire. That is why the Mahabharata is still alive. Every age brings its own Kurukshetra. Every person becomes Arjuna at some point. Every society must one day ask itself, on which side do we stand? And the Mahabharata does not allow us to rest. It forces us to look at its characters from within. Look at Karna, talented, generous, lonely, burning with insult. Look at Duryodhana, proud, stubborn, but also loyal to the one man who stood beside him. Look at Bhishma, bound so tightly by his vow that he watches injustice unfold and cannot break his own silence. Look at Draupadi, standing in a royal court as a question, asking where Dharma has gone. This is the darkness of the Mahabharata. Adharma does not always come wearing the face of a monster. Sometimes it comes as silence, sometimes as loyalty, sometimes as revenge, sometimes it hides behind rules. This is where the world of Aryavarta becomes deeper, because the king was never alone. Around him stood sages, teachers, priests, storytellers, philosophers, and sometimes they were more powerful than the king himself. Vashishta and Vishwamitra, Janaka and Yajnavalkya, Vyasa and Dhritarashtra, Krishna and Arjuna. These relationships reveal something important. In Aryavarta, knowledge and power were not sealed away in separate worlds. The king needed the sage. The sage needed a society that could preserve knowledge. A curse could change a dynasty. A blessing could turn destiny. A vow could follow a person for life. And one act of adharma could decide the fate of generations. That is why ancient Indian stories were never only entertainment, they were warnings. Do not become arrogant, do not break your word, do not treat dharma like a game, because time sees everything. But now we must ask another question. Was Aryavarta only northern India? Ancient texts describe its boundaries in different ways. Sometimes from the Himalayas to the Vindhyas, sometimes through the plains of the Ganga and Yamuna, sometimes as the region where a particular sacred way of life was preserved. But history is like a river. It does not remain still. Ideas travel, stories travel south, gods take new forms, local traditions join larger sacred narratives. Temples rise, pilgrimage routes form, languages change, but the story survives. This is one of the great strengths of Indian civilization. It does not only expand, it absorbs. What was once outside comes inside, what was local becomes sacred. A village tale joins an epic, a regional deity becomes part of a wider world, and slowly a vast civilizational landscape takes shape. Today, when we look toward ancient India, we see many layers at once: the bricks of Harappa, the mystery of Saraswati, the Vedic chants, the journey of the Ramayana, the war of the Mahabharata, the rise of the Janapadas, the power of Magadha, the later empires of the Mauryas and the Guptas, and between them, countless stories. Are all these from the same time? No. Do they all flow into one long river of civilizational memory? Yes. That is what we must understand. History gives us dates, story gives us meaning. Civilization carries both. Aryavarta is one name for that meeting point. Now return to the old temple. The lamp is still trembling, the manuscript is still open. The word Aryavarta still glows on the page, but now it does not feel like only a word. Behind it, there is the sound of rivers, the voice of sages, Rama walking into exile, Sita's suffering, Hanuman crossing the sea, Bhishma lying on a bed of arrows, Karna standing alone, Arjuna breaking down on the battlefield, Krishna speaking in the middle of war, and behind all of it, a civilization asking a question that has never ended. Who are we? Are we only the present, or are we the result of countless memories preserved by those who came before us? Perhaps Aryavarta means this: a past that cannot only be read, it must be heard, it must be felt, and sometimes one must stand silently before it, because every great civilization has a mystery inside it. India's mystery is that it did not preserve its past only in stones, it preserved it in stories, in chants, in festivals, in the sound of temple bells, in the voice of grandparents, and in the eyes of a child who still asks what happened next. So, the answer to today's story is this: Aryavarta was not merely a lost country, it was an ancient doorway into the memory of Bharat. When we enter that doorway, we do not find only kings, we find questions. What is Dharma? What is power for? Why is sacrifice necessary? When does war become a dharma? How does a human being become greater than his own time? These questions will shape the journey of this channel. In Aryavarta Chronicles, we will not only tell events, we will enter the stories that shaped Bharat. We will follow rivers, cities, kings, sages, saints, warriors, and the mysteries that time never fully erased. But before we pass through this doorway, remember one final thing. Understanding Aryavarta is not only a journey of pride, it is also a journey of responsibility. If we remember the past only to praise it, we will fail to learn from it. If we look at it only with doubt, we will lose its soul. We need both: reverence and questions, story and evidence, memory and inquiry. Only then does Aryavarta truly open. Because this name is not meant to trap us in the past, it is meant to remind us that a civilization stays alive only as long as its people keep their questions alive. Sometimes history is not found in stone, sometimes it is hidden in a word, in a chant, in a river, in a story, and the name of that story is Aryavarta. The doorway has opened. In the next chapter, we will follow the river that many traditions remember as the soul of the Vedic world, Saraswati. Did it really flow? Did a civilization live along its banks? Why did its waters vanish while its memory survived? And if a river disappears from the earth but continues to flow inside the mind of a people for thousands of years, has it truly ended? Or is it still flowing inside Bharat? That is the mystery we will open next. Until then, remember this: before India was a modern nation, before maps fixed borders, before history became a subject in classrooms, there was a memory of rivers, of sages, of kings, of vows, of questions, and one ancient name: Aryavarta.